This morning's Breakfast Bible Bite is taking a bit of a different tack. We continue expounding on Psalm 119, verse 63, from the commentary in the previous Breakfast Bible Bites. Refreshing, it reads, I am a companion of all who fear you, and of those who keep your precepts. Will you also notice that the main point of the religious history lesson communicated from a father to a son is usually about the previous lessons learned from God? Without the insight of a core history, the real historical background would be useless when God is uncoupled from it. Our society in these United States is consistently faced with those who assault from the anti-Christian movement who are quick to pounce on a non-constitutional doctrine calling for the separation of church and state. But did the founding fathers really believe that moral religious values and the government should be separated? American history is a case in point of the non-believer trying to uncouple God from our history. Secularists do their level best to expunge the influence of our Creator from our nation's past. In countering this attack, here's a note from John Jay, who served as president of the Continental Congress. He was an American statesman, a patriot, a diplomat, a founding father of the United States, as well as the first Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court from 1789 to 1795. John Jay wrote, Providence has given our people the choice of their rulers, and it is the duty of, as well as the privilege and interest of our Christian nation to select and prefer Christians for their rulers. Ben Franklin said this when the Constitutional Convention was stalemated. God governs in the affairs of men, and if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured that in the sacred writings that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. I firmly believe this. I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. During his inauguration, George Washington took the new oath as prescribed by the Constitution, but added several religious components to that official ceremony. Before taking the oath of office, he summoned a Bible on which to take the oath, adding these words, So help me God, to the end of the oath, then leaned over and kissed the Bible. Fathers, do you teach your children that this is a nation founded on godly principles? Separation of church and state is a one-way street. The government must not be allowed to become involved in the affairs of the church, but a politician must never be allowed to leave their Christian values west of the D.C. Beltway. I'm afraid these secularists have accomplished part of their goal through the U.S. tax system. Regardless of what you may think of Pat Robertson, it was Pat Robertson's 700 Club that validates my point about the government's attempt to limit free speech of the church. Back in the early 90s, it was Robertson who headed up one of the most powerful Christian leagues in the nation. They sought to influence Christian values in Washington by publishing the Voter's Guide, revealing the compliance of potential office holders with the Bible. So in 1990, the National Christian Coalition Incorporated, headquartered in Chesapeake, Virginia, began producing a nonpartisan voter guide, which it distributed to conservative Christian churches. Complaints were quickly presented, and the voters' guides were actually very partisan. Which then led to the denial of the Christian Coalition's income tax exempt status in 1999. Later that same year, the coalition prevailed in its 5-year defense of a lawsuit brought by the Federal Election Commission. That's according to Wikipedia. Fathers, instead of teaching your children the fairy tale of who chopped down the cherry tree, consider teaching them who it was that had the audacity to say that we are a Christian nation founded on biblical principles. Do you know who that was? I'll tell you. It was George Washington who validated that argument when he said, It is impossible to rightly govern the world without God and the Bible. Of all things, even Vladimir Putin agrees, as he portrayed Russia as a staunch defender of traditional values against what he depicted as the morally bankrupt West. That's you and I. In this In his State of the Nation address, mid-December 2013, the former KGB officer insisted social and religious conservatism is the only way to prevent the world from slipping into chaotic darkness. If America is to have a future as a godly world leader, God must not be uncoupled from our history.